It's the Happy Families podcast. It's the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now.
I'm not big on gentle parenting, but I am really big on being good to kids, making sure they've got appropriate boundaries, but making sure that we're communicating with them in a way that acknowledges and recognises that they're people.
And now here's the stars of our show, my mum and dad.
I have no idea, Kylie, if this is going to work. This is the first time ever that we've tried to record a podcast with the entire family home.
And the dishwasher going.
And children in the shower,
running.
bath, the whole lot. So fingers crossed it's going to work. Obviously, folks, we don't record the podcast the minute that you're hearing it live to air on the morning of the podcast. We do it the day before or something like that. But this time we are running late. Our lives have been hectic. Our schedule has blown up like absolutely crazy. And we are trying to do this in a really complicated way. So I've just been in Sydney. Last night I was at Bridgetine College in the eastern suburbs talking about sex, consent and staying safe. And now we're doing our very best with technology to pull this off. Kylie's got the kids running around the house and I'm trying to push the buttons from where I am. And I have no idea if it's going to work. So here we go. Let's do our best. Are you ready? Hey, you know what I want to do? We were trying to get hold of Ryan Reynolds for the show. Ryan Reynolds for the podcast. What are you laughing at? I'm serious. We sent the invite out. Nothing came back. But he's got a new movie coming out.
Have you got his email address?
I haven't got his email address. No, I do what I can.
Did you use Twitter?
No, I should have tweeted him. I should have said, Ryan, come on the show. I've got 6 daughters. He's got 3 daughters. And because he wasn't available to talk to the Happy Families podcast, I mean, we do have a lot of listeners and we have been nominated as Australia's best parenting podcast for later on this month at the Australian Podcast Awards. But maybe I should tweet him and let him know and see if he'll do it. I mean, that would be epic. That would be epic. Could you imagine?
Not really Jimmy Fallon.
Well, he was speaking with Jimmy Fallon about the things that I wanted to talk to him about. That is his brand new Spirited movie, which we're not going to talk about that because we can't. But also, he and his wife Blake Lively are expecting another child. This is what he had to say about baby number 4 on the way. Will it be a girl? Talking with Jimmy Fallon.
Baby number 4 on the way. Number 4. I'm so happy for you and Blake.
Thank you.
Send
Very
my
exciting.
best to Blake, please.
I definitely will. Yeah, it's another. Yeah, no, it's a lot. I mean, we have 3 beautiful girls right now, and 4th one on the way. It's really making me rethink stunts. I've been doing action movies for 25 years. I've broken 12 bones. I just had a 7th surgery. And, kids, though, they beat you up. I got, my daughter's like, I oftentimes, like, it's not an alarm clock that wakes me up. It's like a knee to the jugular.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And, like, I just want to I'm rethinking doing stunts now because I'm starting to realize, like, I want to be able to still kind of be active with my kids and stuff. Like, I love throwing them up in the air. Like I could throw my daughter Betty, especially. I can throw her. She's so little. I could throw her high in the air.
Yeah,
still, and she loves it. The problem is I can't catch her.
Yeah, that's how they learn.
Anymore.
That's how you learn.
That's the biggest issue that I'm facing at the moment. But yeah.
Do you know if it's boy or girl?
We don't. We never find out. We always wait till they come down the chute. But I actually.
Your doctor said that?
Yeah, I just sort of. Even after they're born, I don't ask because I respect their privacy. But I'm kind of hoping for a girl because I know I'm a bit of a hen myself. I know girls. I'm a girl dad. I'm used to that. I'm ready for that. I feel like, right? Yeah.
Yeah, you're a good dad.
So I like Ryan Reynolds because girl dad. This is what I'm thinking. I've got to tweet him. I've got to contact his publicist. We've got to do whatever we can. 6 daughters, podcast, parenting, families. Like he would be so good to talk to. What do you think? Should we do it?
Of course.
I think we should do it. That's what I'm going to. Once we finish putting this podcast together, I'm just going to jump onto Twitter and try.
Okay.
I'm going to try. And
May
now,
the force be with you.
Now, the topic of our podcast today, I wonder what Ryan Reynolds would say. The topic of our podcast is your children don't need punishment. They need you to be responsive. They need you to not be putting them in time out. They don't need to be yelled at. Your children don't need punishment. And I just wonder, would he agree with that? What would he say? I mean, I'd imagine he would say something like, Deadpool doesn't punish. Deadpool just kills people. If the children do the wrong thing, let's just kill.
No, they just throw them up in the air and don't
you
catch
don't
them.
catch them. That's right. Who needs punishment when you've got a dad like that? So let's talk about this topic, and we'll save Ryan Reynolds for another day. We'll see if we can get a scoop with Ryan Reynolds down the track. Where do you want to start this conversation?
Well, you don't really love the phrase gentle parenting.
Oh, yes, I know. And whenever I talk about this idea of kids not being punished, everyone says, well, that's because you're a gentle parent. That Justin Coulson, Happy Families, it's all about gentle parenting.
So why don't you like it? Like, what's wrong with being a gentle parent?
No, well, there's nothing the matter with being a gentle parent. It's more the definition or the lack thereof of gentle parenting. So essentially, gentle parenting is just anything that's not traditional parenting that's kind and gentle and nice. It's like a soft version. A lot of people see gentle parenting as a permissive version of traditional parenting. That is, I'm going to raise my children like everyone else raises their kids, but I'm just not going to get them into trouble. And I'm all for not getting them into trouble, but the whole idea, the whole gentle parenting thing, it really sets some people off. It gets some people really, really annoyed and frustrated. It's not a well-defined term. So from a research point of view, it just doesn't exist in the academic literature because it's so loosely defined. And what it really, I think, stands for is it's just a soft, kind version of the old school parenting. It's old school parenting, but without the disciplinary approach where we're being punitive. And so many people think that it means that the kids can get away with anything. So I'm not big on gentle parenting, but I am really big on being good to kids, making sure they've got appropriate boundaries, but making sure that we're communicating with them in a way that acknowledges and recognizes that they're people and that they're having challenges. So that's the main reason that I'm not a big fan of it.
So one of the things that we try to do while we work with our children is not actually get them in trouble, but actually work through the challenges that we're experiencing or they're experiencing to come to a conclusion that will work for all of us, a solution that will work for all of us.
And some people would call that gentle parenting, just to be clear. So we're not saying that it's not. I'm just saying I struggle with the term, and I think there are other things that we do that don't qualify as that.
So what would you label us then?
Well, that's what my new book's about, which we're not going to talk about until next year. But essentially what we're trying to do is create an environment that supports our children's needs so that they can do what they're supposed to do and grow and develop mastery and do better in their lives. But this whole idea of getting your kids in trouble, what we've found is every time we get the kids in trouble, we lose the relationship. The kids feel lousy about themselves because they feel like they're being both controlled and they feel like they're being judged as incapable and incompetent. And so, as you said, our goal with the children when they're doing things that don't work is to sit with them and say, hey, we're having a hard time here. We need to work this out. I get that you're struggling, but let's get everyone cool. Let's get everyone out of the hot emotional state that they're in, because high emotions, low intelligence, or as one of our favorite podcast listeners and premium Happy Families members has said, when you're on the brink, you need to stop and think. You can't think straight in a high emotion state, because our kids respond to things based on what's going on in their brain and their body before they respond to things in a rational way. If they're really heightened, we catch their emotions, but they blow up and we can't have useful conversations with them. So our job really is to say, hey, let's just be together. Let's help you to feel safe and secure. And once you feel like that, then we can work out a way forward. It sounds so easy in theory. In practice, so wow, it's hard.
Just thinking about the last week and the multiple opportunities we've had to work with our children. Some of them haven't gone so well. And the thing that stands out to me in each of the cases where things did not go the way we would have wanted them to was just that sense of injustice that the kids felt because they felt so wrongly and harshly judged.
Yeah.
We attribute the worst possible motives to our kids' behaviour when it doesn't fit in with the things that we want. And it's in those moments that we actually need to kind of have soft eyes and see them for the beautiful children that they really are.
So to put that into context, what that really means when you're saying we attribute the worst possible motives to them is we walk into the room and say, how many times do I have to tell you? I can't believe you're doing this again. There's something deficient about your character. You're a problem. You're always doing this. And we call them names. We label them. We say things about them. What is your issue is at the very heart of what's going on here. What our kids need, as you've said, is they need us to walk in and say, you're really struggling at the moment. I'm here to help. Let's get you out of the room. Let's get you away from your sister. Let's get you away from the issue that's being created here. And when everything's cool, we'll have a chat. Case in point, about a week ago, one of our kids was super, super angry at her sister. And we separated them. And then the one that was really angry, she had to go and take care of something that was going to take her a few hours. It was a Saturday, and she had another commitment that was going to take her out of the house for a few hours. When I picked her up from where she'd been, I said to her, do we need to talk about what happened this morning? She looked at me and she said, Dad, I've had a really good opportunity to think about it, and no, we don't need to talk about it, and I know I need to be better, and I'm really sorry, and I'll make it right tonight when I get home. Now, we've had ongoing incidences with that child and her sister because they're human. They're not perfect. They still struggle. I mean, adults still struggle. We still struggle with our own siblings and our own parents, and sometimes even with one another. But it's about giving them the opportunity to have the learning, to make the decision for themselves to be better, and to move things forward in a positive and constructive way. That's the goal, getting them to do it, recognizing that they're going to fail because we all fail. But if we can do that, I just think we get much better outcomes, and they learn to be resilient. They learn how to regulate. They learn how to get beyond the challenges they're facing. Like the traditional parenting model, I came across a great quote from Mona Delahook. I'm hoping to get her on the podcast soon. She's brilliant. And Mona Delahook said, traditional parenting is agnostic of social emotional development. In other words, when you're doing this standard parenting thing, you don't really care about what's going on socially and emotionally with your child. It's just, well, you've done the wrong thing.
You want compliance.
Yeah, that's right. Now you need to do the right thing. Whereas a more responsive approach is where we say, you've done the wrong thing. You're really upset. Let's work through the emotional stuff first, and then we can have a logical conversation. Kind of makes sense. I mean, if you've ever been in a blue with an adult, there's no point trying to get through this when you're both angry. You've got to go and cool down before you have a sensible conversation about it. That's really all we're talking about, and that's why I don't think we need to punish our kids. There's no justification for it, because once we get everyone calm, we can have conversations, problem solve, and get on with things.
The more I learn about myself and the way I deal with things, the more I'm recognizing just how integral learning to regulate one's emotions impacts every facet of our lives.
Yeah.
And so you've obviously talked through some of the things that we do, but if we could just break it down into some really simple steps, when we've got kids who are playing up, how do we teach them how to regulate their emotions so that they can work through those challenges in more effective ways, especially considering that as adults, most of us actually still struggle to do this ourselves.
Yeah, and that was going to be the first thing. We've actually got to model it. We've got to be a good example of emotional control ourselves. And I know, I mean, I'll speak really personally and candidly. When I'm tired and the kids are going nuts, I just don't do as well. I'm much more likely to be volatile, to be frustrated, to be loud or even explosive and say, that's it, I've had enough, this is ridiculous. Because when we're tired and when we're hungry, when we're at the end of our tether, we just can't seem to do it nearly as well. So number one, we've got to keep it together ourselves, because emotions are contagious, high emotions, low intelligence. Once we're keeping it together, there's a question that I've started asking myself just in the last few weeks, and I think it's really powerful. How do I not add to my child's suffering right now? So when children are playing up, when they're behaving in challenging ways, it's because they're experiencing a challenge. They're experiencing hardship. They're experiencing difficulty. To take it to an extreme, perhaps, they're experiencing suffering. So I try to remember to ask myself, how can you not add to her suffering? Like, what can you do? How can you approach her in a way that will not make things worse for her? Because high emotions, low intelligence, when you're on the brink, you need to stop and think. We've got to pull things down. Emotions are contagious. Once I've asked that question, I step in with much softer eyes, with a much more gentle and compassionate heart, and with a desire to help, not hurt. At which point, you separate the kids, or you move them away from whatever it is that's causing the ruckus, and say, you're having a really tough time. I'm not going to say anything to you just now. Let's just go for a walk. Let's get you outside. Let's get you in a different environment where we can take a few deep breaths, and we'll deal with this a little bit later. Let's just get out of the conflict situation. And I think that's actually enough, because once you're out of the conflict situation, maybe you wait 30 seconds, maybe you wait 30 minutes, maybe you wait 3 hours, but then you can come back to it when everyone's in an emotionally cool state and say, let's figure this out. That's the approach we're looking for. That's the outcome we're trying to achieve.
What I love about this is when things don't work out like that, things escalate. They go from being hot to like boiling point very, very quickly. But not only do things escalate usually between the two people that have started or instigated the struggle, but then you get involved, and often if there's another parent in the house, they get involved, and before you know it, you've got 4 or 5 people at top end emotions struggling to kind of work through this. Whereas, as you've talked about, I guess a better way of doing things. So as I'm listening to you share all of that, I'm thinking about the times where it hasn't worked out like that, and watched the climate in the house go from 2 children having an argument to now mum and dad being involved and heightened emotions on all levels. And it just escalates out of control very, very quickly. Whereas if we can take a step back and try that approach, as you've kind of articulated it so beautifully, what happens is we discharge the antagonism and anger in the room instead of adding to it. Instead of having everything explode disproportionately, we actually calm everything down and give it the space that it needs for everybody to start to think clearly and work through it at a much more intelligent level of thinking.
And that's the secret. That's what we're trying to do. We've got a free course available to help you to do that. It's called the Timeout Alternative. It's a 7-day course, 10 minutes a day. Or you've got, it's normally $74. That's what we're going to be charging for it, but it's free for a limited time only. All you've got to do to find out about it is go to Dr. Justin Coulson's Happy Families on Facebook. And we would love to give you access to it so you can stop getting kids in trouble and work out, problem solve together with your kids. Have a look at it. I think that you're going to find so much that will help you in our free 7-day course, the Timeout Alternative. All the details at Dr. Justin Coulson's Happy Families. I'm going to go and jump onto Twitter right now, try and get hold of Ryan Reynolds, see if he'll come on the podcast with us. Wish me luck.
Or just let him know that Mrs. Happy Families wants to talk to him.
All right, okay. No, I'm not going to let you do. I do all the interviews on this podcast. I do the interviews, and that's the way it's going to stay, especially with Ryan Reynolds. Hey, tomorrow, it's I'll Do Better Tomorrow. Please join us then. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. We hope it's been helpful. The Happy Families podcast, as always, produced by Justin Rulon from Bridge Media, Craig Bruce, our executive producer. For more info, visit us at happyfamilies.com.au.